If you have ever expressed an interest in creative writing, I'm sure someone in your life has given you the advice to write what you know. But is lived experience alone enough to build great stories and craft original narratives? Where does the art of storytelling come into it? In this video, we're going to take a look at this age-old idea and see if there's any merit in sticking to writing what you know. In my first video, I made it clear that one of my philosophies of writing is that the writer must make their work as personal as possible. But this does not necessarily mean that your work should be all about you. I understand this might come across as a little bit paradoxical, so let me try and break it down a little bit more. When you're writing, you need to have a vulnerable mindset. You need to explore what you really think about people, things, and the world around you, and you need to explore this to such an extent that you surprise yourself with the discoveries. You need to break through layers of social conditioning and cliché to achieve personal insight that is unique to you and intrinsically linked to your own life experiences. But this is just the start. From there, you can't just be like, hey guys, check out this thing I discovered, and expect it to be good art. Just because something is true to life doesn't mean that it's automatically compelling. You need to construct a story with characters the audience can get emotionally invested in and take them on a journey to discover and question things for themselves. This is what I mean by making things personal, and you can do this in an infinite number of ways across any genre, in situations and scenarios both familiar and unfamiliar to you, provided you do the appropriate research, of course.
What? Of course.
Of course, fucking of course. I wasn't asking, I was telling.
I will provide a warning at this point. What you should not do in terms of mindset is write any story that goes, this is what I know, and now I need to railroad the audience into concluding that I am right. No. And you definitely shouldn't do the following kind of story that says, this is my life, here are all the awful and unjust things that have ever happened to me, isn't it awful? Double no. Art is exploration and discovery, not a lecture or a self-indulgent whine. We don't need any more of this. The recent works of Hollywood have already stocked us up for centuries, and stories written from these perspectives are all from the ego, with nothing nourishing coming through from the soul. For you guys at home, I want you to be able to achieve the real thing, the real art, for your own satisfaction and, most importantly, for the satisfaction of your readers and audiences. Now, that was all a little bit heavy, so let's lighten things up a bit and talk some technique. There are endless techniques we could go through that would make a personal story more engaging for the audience, but today we'll look at just one, mostly because it's the one that's been on my mind a lot recently. So far throughout the video, I've been running clips from good films that are very much in the basic write what you know category, but are still enormously entertaining. Films like Clerks and Office Space are absolutely based on the creator's own personal experiences in the mundane world of work, but they both use a technique that I think is useful to talk about and practice. This technique is absurdism. There is a well-known quote from Carl Rogers that goes, "What is most personal is most universal." Mike Judge, the creator of Office Space, definitely seems to understand this. The film shows the story of jaded office worker Peter Gibbons finally coming to the end of his tether and turning to extreme measures to protect himself from the rat race of life. It opens with a frustrating daily commute, focuses its central conflict on his mistreatment by his boss, and is loaded up throughout with the painful and soul-destroying minutiae of everyday life. On the surface, it sounds like everything I've warned against, right? But in reality, it's one of the funniest, most relatable, and most inspiring films that I've ever seen. Office Space presents the everyday things that people deal with in a very specific way.
Why does it say pepper jam when there is no pepper jam? I swear to God, one of these days I just kick this piece of shit out the window.
It doesn't give a general overview of work sucks, and it doesn't present the actual physical reality of a normal workday. Instead, it gives us absurd, hyper-realistic examples that make us go, oh god, that exact same thing has happened to me.
We have sort of a problem here. Yeah, you apparently didn't put one of the new cover sheets on your TPS reports? Yeah. You see, we're putting the cover sheets on all TPS reports now before they go out. Did you see the memo about this?
We need to talk about your TPS reports. Yeah. Did you get that memo? It's just we're putting new cover sheets on all the TPS reports, so if you could go ahead and try to remember to do that from now on, that'd be great. All right.
What's this I hear about you having problems with your TPS reports?
Yeah.
When of course, in all likelihood, this exact thing probably hasn't happened to us. It just really, really feels like it has. The film shows us minor events that manage to completely sum up everything we think about the situation in an absurdly small package. It's this technique that gives us the feeling of relatability in the story. It's not the presentation of literal fact, it's a delivery of recognisable emotion.
Corporate accounts payable, Nina speaking. Just a moment. Corporate accounts payable, Nina speaking.
Everyone knows what this feels like, and everyone has had people in their lives like this.
Uh-oh. Sounds like somebody's got a case of the Mondays.
So the film offers us a metaphor for what life is like, rather than showing us what it literally is. This ultimately is one of the main tenets of storytelling as a whole.
Yeah. If you could just go ahead and make sure you do that from now on, that would be great.
Office Space completely nails the most soul-destroying aspects of corporate life in these small scenes, but it also takes the opportunity to dig deeper when it comes to the plot. Probably the most truly absurd moment in the film is when Peter goes to the hypnotherapist. Peter asks the therapist to make it so he is not aware of being at work anymore. He says he would like to come home and think he's been out fishing all day. The therapist puts him into a trance, directing him into a state of complete relaxation where all of his concerns and worries disappear. Peter falls deep into the state of bliss, but before the therapist can click his fingers to end the trance, he suffers an enormous heart attack and dies, leaving Peter in this altered state for the foreseeable future. This is a great, unique twist, and it works perfectly for setting up the rest of the movie. Now Peter can go through life fulfilling all the fantasies that he and the audience always wished they could. He asks out the girl, he ignores his overtime shifts, and he is immune to the stresses and fears of the world around him. His newfound carefree attitude even impresses the corporate consultants hired to cut staffing in the office, and instead of being fired for doing no work, he's instead promoted, putting him on the winning side of life's unfairness for the very first time.
So you're gonna fire Michael and Samir and you're gonna give me more money? Wow.
This theme of unfairness, specifically work-life cynicism, becomes a major focus for much of the rest of the film. It directly sets off the main plot of the money-stealing computer virus, but it also becomes the core emotional appeal of the story for the audience. This scene, in particular, really drives the point home.
I don't know what happened to me at that hypnotherapist, but when I saw that fat man keel over and die, Michael, we don't have a lot of time on this earth. We weren't meant to spend it this way. Human beings were not meant to sit in little cubicles staring at computer screens all day. That is not right, Michael. 5 years of your mid-20s now gone. And you're gonna go in tomorrow, they're gonna throw you out on the street so that Bill Lumberg's stock will go up 1/4 of a point.
Yeah, this film is funny, but it also has a lot to say, and it all comes from a really personal perspective. Mike Judge really makes us feel the points he's making, without ever shoving it down our throats. This is something to keep in mind for when you're working on your own projects.
Welcome to Costco. I love you.
Now I can tell you firsthand that working with the public sucks, and I'm sure many people in public-facing roles have an equally impressive number of stories as me when it comes to the more insane incidents and encounters that you have to deal with in these jobs. Clerks is a film that captures this feeling well, and it also incorporates some of the same themes as Office Space, namely the desire to do something more with one's life. Clerks focuses on a day in the life of convenience store worker Dante Hicks as he works a double shift on a day he's supposed to have off.
All I'm saying is if you're that unhappy, you should leave.
I'm not even supposed to be here today.
It doesn't quite have the same level of angst as Office Space, In some ways it's more like a start-of-life crisis than a midlife crisis. But again, it does a good job of presenting the case for its main character's decision to change without being too heavy-handed. Throughout the film, Dante whines about his current work situation and pines over his ex-girlfriend Caitlin, but the film is quick to frame him as an arsehole whenever he does this.
You know, there's a million fine-looking women in the world, dude, but they don't all bring you lasagna at work. Most of them just cheat on you.
The film doesn't take Dante's complaints seriously, and his friend Randall is always on hand to force some accountability and point out why Dante's issues are self-made. The film is really loose in terms of plot, with most of the focus on seemingly irrelevant banter between characters and on the retelling of strange and unusual stories purely for the sake of telling them. It could have very easily devolved into either one of the pitfalls I mentioned at the start of this video, but somehow the film manages to avoid them both. Yes, the dialogue is very wordy and ponderous, but it never feels like you're being lectured to. Rather, the dialogue informs us about the young protagonist's perspectives on things as they try and figure out how to make sense of the world. It brings us along on the journey with the characters, rather than forcing the writer's insights upon us. It also allows us to sympathise with Dante while still not being 100% on his side. We, the audience, are always aware that he is pursuing the wrong aims with Caitlin, that he is taking advantage of his current girlfriend Veronica, and that he's whining about his job as a character flaw rather than a virtue.
I'm not even supposed to be here today!
Oh, fuck you! Fuck you, pal! Who closed the store to play hockey? Who closed the store to go to a wake? You want to blame somebody? Blame yourself.
The situations that Dante finds himself in are, much like Office Space, exaggerated for comic effect, but they always reveal an underlying truth. Whether it's about his character,
37. My girlfriend sucked 37 dicks.
In a row?
or about the world they're living in.
Well, I don't know if sorry can make up for it. You've highly offended me.
The film is a little rough, as it's a first effort, low budget indie film, but watching it you can tell the script has had a lot of love and care poured into it. As a first time project, there's a lot in here that can be of use to up and coming writers and creators, and whatever else you think of this film and its creator, Kevin Smith definitely succeeded in making something really unique when this first came out. Anyway, if you haven't seen either of these films before, I highly recommend that you check them out, with the disclaimer that it's not my fault if you feel an irresistible urge to hand in your notice at your day job after watching. Both films take a really different tact in their presentation of existential malaise, but I think they're both equally worth watching, even just for the fact that in Office Space you see a practiced writer at the very top of their game, and in Clerks you see an inspired first-time writer just starting out. As I've said before, my aim in making these videos is to try and encourage any creative people out there that might need a little extra push, guidance or motivation. Not to be too serious, but in a time where governments throughout the world are cracking down on free speech and censorship in media is rife, we really need to fight hard against creative demoralisation and focus on the things that give meaning to life, regardless of the pressure applied by external forces. I know you all have a story or two to tell, so I want to help you work through them however I can. Anyway guys, if you've made it to the end of this video, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. I'm still only a month or two into the YouTube journey, so if you have any feedback for me, please let me know. If you enjoyed the video, please press the like button to help out the channel, and subscribe so you can be in the loop for new videos coming out. Thanks again folks, I'll see you all again soon.